What's up, yellow little faith, and welcome to the 6th episode of Season 2 of the Fagnostic Podcast. I'm your hostess, not your Moses, Matt Hayes, and if I'm still giving you episodes, it means that I'm still looking for answers. Y'all, today I have a gay icon on the show. In 1985, Steve Pieters was interviewed by Tammy Faye on her evangelical talk show Seen Around the World, and was recently portrayed in the Academy Award-winning film The Eyes of Tammy Faye, starring Jessica Chastain and Andrew Garfield. Steve has been living with HIV/AIDS for over 30 years, literally surviving death. As a gay pastor living with a very disease that most evangelicals weaponized against our community, Steve has done so much to bring healing to the queer community at large. He truly is one of our generation's gay pioneers in every sense of the word, and honestly, I cannot believe his publicist agreed to set this interview up. I'm so honored to introduce you all to this living legend, Steve Pieters. Steve, what a freaking treat to have you here. I wanted to gush over you, but I wanted to make sure it was being recorded, so I didn't want to gush before we got rolling. So this is our actual introduction to each other. I'm really, really honored that you were here. I can't believe that you said yes. And I'm so anyway, thank you. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. So we'll get started with the first two questions, just as formalities to get those out of the way. The first question being, are you a believer?
Yes, I am. I am a great believer in all kinds of wonderful things. My faith is in God, as I know God through Jesus Christ. I am a pretty traditional Christian, except for the fact that I'm gay.
You can't say that word in Florida anymore.
I know. Gay! Anyway, yeah, so I am a believer.
Great. Can you identify your pronouns for us?
He, him, his.
Awesome. Thank you. What was it like? This is a pronouns question, but you've seen such a long history in progression as it relates to the queer community. What was it like? I mean, fighting to be accepted as just a normal human being who had this disease, and then becoming, eligible to get married and ordained, and then now we're talking about pronoun inclusion. You have seen everything.
Well, not everything. I wasn't here at the dawn of time. Some people seem to believe, but
right.
Yeah, I've seen a lot.
Gosh.
I came out in 1975 after 23 years of feeling, well, most of those 23 years when I was conscious of being gay,
right.
From the earliest memories I have. And it even goes further back than that, because my father was the chairman of the math department and the varsity wrestling coach at Phillips Academy, Andover, one of the oldest boys prep schools in New England. It's now no longer a boys prep school, it's co-ed, but
right.
But at the time I was growing up, it was all boys. And
all boys in singlets, by the way.
Yeah. And yeah. And anyway, so every year my parents would have the wrestling team down for dinner. And the year that I was like 18 months old or so, I found a letter after he died that my dad had written to his parents saying, "We're so excited because little Stevie said his first words today. We had the wrestling team down for dinner. And as they came in through the door, Stevie sat up in his high chair and said, just as clearly as could be, 'Boys, boys, boys.'" Yeah.
Oh my God, you called it before even anybody had a chance to know.
I was 18 months old. What can I say?
Oh my God.
Then. But
that's incredible.
I didn't have such joy about it as I got older. Somehow
Sure.
I learned to be ashamed of it.
Somehow, as in like the way that every young gay boy, especially growing up in the church, is taught to be ashamed of it.
60s, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
you said you were 24 when you came out, which that would have been 75, you said?
75, I was 23.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were in seminary at that point?
No. I didn't start in seminary until after I was already out.
Okay.
I came out by going to Metropolitan Community Church in Chicago.
Which is notoriously a very gay affirming church and was started by gay people, right?
Right, exactly, by Reverend Troy Perry.
Yeah.
Was the founder, and it was founded as a safe place for LGBT queer people to worship together safely. So I came out through the MCC in Chicago, and it was only then that I decided that I wanted to become a clergy person. And so I went to seminary, a McCormick Theological Seminary, a Presbyterian seminary, from 77 to 79. And then I became the pastor of the MCC in Hartford, Connecticut, from 79 to 82.
Well, wait, so the McCormick, is that a PCA or a USA Presbyterian seminary? Were they affirming?
They were not at the time,
right?
But they certainly had. It was a liberal progressive seminary.
I think that's the USA Presbyterians, because the PCAs are the ones that are Calvinists and like very John MacArthur-esque and predestination and stuff like that. But did they fight you coming in as a gay man?
No, they were delighted to have me come in as a gay man studying for the ministry in MCC. It was curious though, because I had, believe it or not, I had been living in the gay community from 1975 to 77, and in the heart of the gay part of Chicago, and going to MCC and going out to the bars and hanging out with my gay and lesbian friends there, and I'd never had sex. I'd had a few drunken tosses in the hay in college, but that was about it. So here I was, my first week in seminary, in one of my first classes, we were told to introduce ourselves and why we were studying whatever class it was. And I said, well, because I'm gay. And I'm out and proud, and I'm an MCC student clergy, and so I'm very excited about being here, and I know that the Presbyterians are studying the issue or starting to study the issue, and I'm very excited to be able to enter the conversation, not as a Presbyterian, but as MCC member of the student clergy. And after the class, one of my classmates came up to me, and a very attractive man, and said, "You want to have lunch?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Well, let's go to my place." And so we went to his place. And what do you know? We had lunch, but it wasn't food. It was sex. And I had just a wonderful time and thought, oh, finally.
There was some salad being tossed, but not in the Tupperware.
Exactly. And some hot dogs being eaten. But anyway, and God, I didn't go there, did I? Yes, I did.
This is a safe space, Steve.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm so glad. Anyway, so Randy, his name was Randy, appropriately enough.
My dad's name is Randy, and my mom's name is Nancy, and I always said that they made a Randy Nancy.
Randy Nancy. I love that. That's great. Well, anyway, Randy would not have anything to do with me on campus after that. And I began to realize, and I began telling my other students who were friendly, that you could kind of tell who was a closeted homosexual at McCormick Seminary by the people who avoided me. And I never outed Randy, even though he argued against the ordination of homosexuals in one class, and I was arguing with him about it. I didn't out him, which, I don't know. I just didn't feel it was my place.
Of course.
Like, oh, I can't believe you introduced me to sex, what sex could really be like, and here you are saying that homosexuals shouldn't be ordained, and you are going to be ordained within the year. Oh my God.
Is he still with us?
I don't know. I really don't know. Last I heard, he was the pastor of a small church in the Midwest, a Presbyterian church in the Midwest,
Acting as a heterosexual or as a
small town. Last I heard, he was a confirmed old bachelor.
much, oh, gosh, that's so sad.
Yeah. And I think that he was very lonely. And we
Yeah.
even talked about that at one point. And I said, don't you think you're going to be awfully lonely? And he said, my call is stronger than my loneliness. Oh, okay.
I mean, there's a beauty in that conviction. I mean, it's a heartbreaking beauty, but my God, like,
I know.
oh, I hope my wish though is for him to feel peace and that it's been worth it for him to deprive himself of being physically intimate with somebody or physically and emotionally intimate with somebody for the sake of what he believes in. That's tough. Well, when did you because what I found very interesting is that you were actually pastoring when you got diagnosed with HIV, right?
Well, it wasn't called HIV then, but
right.
Yeah, it was 1982, and I started to get sick 40 years ago this month, as a matter of fact. I started to get sick with what we now know as AIDS.
Let's just give a bit of gratitude and props to the fact that you have survived 40 years with something that should have and probably almost did kill you. And here you are thriving. I mean, what a miracle! What a blessing.
I know. I mean, I'm every once in a while I'm kind of dumbstruck by the miracle or the anomaly or whatever it is that has saved me.
Mm-hmm.
And that the fact that I'm still alive. I mean, for your listeners, I started getting sick 40 years ago this month, and over the next 2 years, well, I was diagnosed with GRID, gay-related immunodeficiency. I moved here to Los Angeles, and it was over the next 2 years I developed while I had GRID, hepatitis, cytomegalovirus, pneumonia, mononucleosis, herpes, shingles, variety of fungal infections. I was really sick. And I even had a horrible fungal infection on my right foot that no dermatologist seemed to be able to properly diagnose or treat for months and months and months. It was horribly painful. It caused these huge water blizzards. I had one dermatologist tell me, oh, well, I haven't seen that since I was a medic in the World War II in the South Pacific. It was a fungal infection caused by walking barefoot in sheep dung in New Zealand. Well, I had never done any of that. So
not even for fun?
Not even for fun. I was a gym rat.
Right.
And I had stepped into a shower that was not draining properly, and there was like all this standing water in the shower.
And as we know, the gyms that are located in neighborhoods can maybe provide the same things that sheep dung would.
Well, yeah, and I went to the gayest gym in Silver Lake,
right.
Bodybuilders Gym, which is no longer a gay gym, but boy, back then it sure was, and I loved it.
Yeah.
When I moved here to LA, I finally found my home when I found that gay bodybuilders gym. You know?
Yep. That was crunch for me in West Hollywood for a while.
Yeah. And so in 82 and 83, Bodybuilders was owned by two gay men, partners, and who also owned the Max Baths, which were the biggest bathhouse in Silver Lake.
Okay.
Biggest bathhouse east of West Hollywood.
Right.
And I frequented both, even though I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And finally, fast forwarding to April of '84, I was diagnosed with two kinds of terminal cancer, stage 4 lymphoma and Kaposi sarcoma, which gave me a diagnosis of full-blown AIDS. Back then, diagnoses were very different. So I had two kinds of terminal cancer, stage 4 lymphoma.
That's a killer, stage 4 lymphoma.
And yes, that is as far as you can go before you die. That's the latest stage, So I was given 8 months to live by one health professional, and I was on the staff of the Metropolitan Community Church in the Valley in North Hollywood, and the pastor, who was my mentor in ministry back in Chicago, Reverend Ken Martin, invited me to preach the Easter sermon 2 weeks after I was diagnosed as terminal. And it was the most valuable gift I could have been given, to have to, to really look at what it meant to believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ as someone who was supposed to die a horrible, stigmatized death from multiple diseases, including AIDS, which we knew so little about back then. Well, so I stood up in the pulpit and I threw my notes in the air because I thought I don't know, I want to preach this from my heart.
Yeah.
And what I discovered in those 2 weeks was that if God is greater than the death of Jesus on the cross, which I believe it is shown to us in the resurrection, then God is greater than AIDS. Well, the congregation went, oh, how could you say? I mean, the reaction was, how can you say that? And then I began to see light bulbs go off all over oh, sure. God is a greater reality than AIDS. God is still in the healing business, I said. I'm quoting Troy Perry, actually. They told me the worst thing they possibly could tell me, that I'm going to die from this horrible stigmatized disease. And I discovered that I could still I could still enjoy my friends. I could still laugh. I could still sing. I could still dance. And I tap danced right across the front of the pulpit, across the altar. And the congregation roared their approval, of course. And I said, I can still be fully alive, even in the face of death.
Steve, at that point, you had 2 weeks to deal with this death sentence, essentially. And then you were going to be preaching this sermon. I totally see the metaphor correlation between the resurrection and then you also being resurrected from death's door. But I imagine you were getting a lot of people outside the progressive sect of Christianity saying that you deserved this, that you earned this, that this was God's punishment.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely.
How did you maintain your faith?
Well, because I didn't pay any attention to those people. I knew they were wrong. I knew that God did not give me AIDS as some kind of perverse punishment. God does not punish us with disease, in my theology.
Right.
God is with us in our struggles to live with and survive something like AIDS and cancer.
Yeah. Gosh, it just is so, I can't imagine your mindset at that day and age, being able to sustain your faith in this entity that was being weaponized against you, and then be able to get up to the pulpit and tell, and then encourage others going through the same thing. You just have been destined since birth, I imagine,
Boys.
to be this messenger of hope.
Yeah.
So how long after that then did the Tammy Faye team reach out to you?
Oh, well, Tammy Faye was Tammy Faye was in November of 1985. So it was a year and a half after I'd been diagnosed as terminal. I'd been sick for 3 years at that point.
Okay.
Really badly sick. And I have to mention that when I did survive to see 1985, my doctor was pretty impressed, and she invited me to be patient number 1 on the very first antiviral they tried against HIV, a drug called Suramin. And so I was the first patient to go on the drug, and within 6 weeks, my stage 4 lymphoma had gone into complete remission, and my KS lesions had completely disappeared. They put 89 other people on the drug around the country, and it killed a large number of those people. and everybody else died from progression of HIV and AIDS, except one other fellow who only took it for 4 weeks. I took it for 39 weeks, and it very nearly killed me.
I was going to say, because it also destroys your immune system, right?
It did. It destroyed my adrenal glands, and they didn't figure that out until I was almost dead. And Tammy Faye happened 2 weeks after that near-death experience. So I was still on Suramin. I was very sick, but I was not as sick as I had been prior to 2 weeks before that. So the Tammy Faye team asked me, the team, her producer called and had gotten my name from a mutual friend, or my friend, Reverend Ken South at the AIDS Project in Atlanta, the AIDS Agency in Atlanta. And he was the executive director. Anyway, he told them about me, and they said, great. And so her producer called me and said that Tammy wanted to be the first televangelist to interview a gay man with AIDS. And I was suspicious, of course.
To say, did you feel exploited or set up?
No, I mean, I talked with her about what, first of all, I insisted that if I did it, that it would be done live, so that they couldn't edit it to their own purposes. And secondly, I said, I want some assurance from you that I'm not being, I'm not falling into a trap here, that she's going to try to convert me to heterosexuality or her way of believing. I am an out and proud gay man, and I know that AIDS is not God's punishment. I know that God is with me in my struggle against AIDS, and God is weeping with my gay brothers and lesbian sisters as we die, as we face death from AIDS. And she said, "Oh, that's great." The producer, that's great. I mean, Tammy will want to talk about all of that, and she has every intention of being supportive. So I said, okay. And
do you think she had someone in her life that would have, because if someone from PTL, praise the Lord, called and said, hey, we want to interview you about, your life, I would feel very much like on the defensive already. Do you think that she had somebody in her life that kind of expanded her heart and mind to having more sympathy for our community? Or do you think it was just part of who she was naturally?
I think it was part of who she was, that she had a big open heart, particularly for people who were outcasts or thought to be outcasts. And she wanted to be the first televangelist to give a supportive, loving interview of a gay man with AIDS.
Gosh.
And I, of course, I didn't really know that going in. But when the interview started, I was in a studio in Ontario, California, and she was in Charlotte at Heritage Village, in her studios. Mm-hmm. And there's another story around, why I was in a studio and not there with her. But anyway,
I have that on my list to talk about, so we'll circle back to that.
All right, we'll circle back. Good. Okay. Well, anyway, she I could not see her. I was in this dark studio with this light on me and the camera right in front of me that I was supposed to look at, the red light, but I could not see her. But I had her in this earpiece that kept falling out. And I thought, oh, geez, I wish I brought my earrings. So she made reference to the fact that she was a girl and she could hook it around her earring.
I caught that in the interview,
and I remember thinking to myself, oh God, I wish I brought mine.
When I even laugh now because that was your first satellite interview, wasn't it?
My first satellite interview?
Yeah.
No, I had been interviewed a lot by satellite, not by, I don't know how they did it, but
because I remember her remarking that it was her first time, and I thought you said
That was her first time.
And so I laughed because like here we are doing Zoom interviews all the time now. So you were like the pioneer of video interviews.
No, it was the first time that PTL had done a satellite hookup. Wow. I mean, CNN had done satellite interviews before that, but televangelism had never done anything like that.
Right.
And so they were very excited about the fact that not only was she interviewing a gay man with AIDS, but she was doing it by satellite. And there I was on this little TV set that was on a doily with a flower pot on my head. and I couldn't see any of that, of course. So I didn't know that until I saw the videotape later.
Right.
So
you couldn't see her emotions overtaking her during this interview. Wow.
No, I couldn't. I could hear her. And 3 minutes before the interview started, she was in my ear talking to me and thanking me profusely for having the courage to do this interview and you know, that she intended it to be a very positive, supportive interview. So not to worry about that. And she told me this is the Phil Donahue show of the PTL network. Phil Donahue being, you know, the pioneer talk show, killer talk show that was so successful back then. And anyway, so she said, we're not going to talk about Jesus. You know, it's a secular talk show. We're going to talk about being gay, how you knew you were gay, and about having AIDS. And, you know, she didn't really say we're going to talk about being gay. I take that back. She said, I'd love to talk to you about being gay and especially about having AIDS. So I thought, you know, being gay was going to be kind of peripheral to the interview when she talked to me in those 3 minutes before. But then she launched into, you know, what made me think I had to be gay, and was there no hope for me being straight, and, you know, and had I ever had a sexual experience with a woman? And
I couldn't believe the things she was referencing on this. You know, I mean, even though it's not labeled as a Christian talk show, it's a talk show on a Christian network. So in essence, it is. And she's talking about, you know, I mean, even without saying the word horny, like when she asks if you had kissed a girl, did anything happen? And I mean, just very explicit things for a Christian audience.
I know. And she said, and you know, she said, it was really interesting because at one point she said, oh, I just want to put my arms around you. And I said, oh, I want to put my arms around you. And she said, have you ever had a sexual experience with a woman? And I mean, it was like, boom, off in a different direction.
I know. But what a gift that was to our community, because it was also able to expel a lot of presumptions about our community. I don't even know if she knew what gift she gave us in that moment.
I don't know. You know, I never had a chance to talk to her afterwards.
Really?
I mean, we exchanged greetings through a mutual friend several times through the years, but I always wanted to meet her and talk to her about what had happened during that interview. And I never had the opportunity to do that, which I regret, you know.
Well, after the past year, she must feel that energy, seeing the success of this film that advocated for her. Because I'll be honest, I mean, I grew up Southern Baptist. I know, but I just mean in the afterlife, like in her spirit must recognize what's being done to speak to her advocacy. Because I forgot what a gay icon she was. I mean, she was kind of the butt of a joke for a lot of evangelicals, and I wonder if that's because she was kind of an outlier in the evangelical world because of her activism
and because of her makeup and lavish lifestyle and her, you know, wardrobe and her wigs and all of that. She was not your typical televangelist wife.
No,
you know, she was out there. And, you know, I have been very blessed in the last couple of years, it's about 3 years now, that I've become friends with her two children.
Really?
Jay and Tammy Sue.
Yeah.
And that's been a real blessing to me to get to know them. And they have, I mean, Jay has told me over and over again, her son, that interview that day, he was 10 years old and he knew that she was doing something radically progressive and different, and that it changed the family because after my interview, she started taking Tammy, Sue, and Jay to LGBT-friendly churches, to pride parades. She even took them to hospices and hospitals to visit people with AIDS. And this was like totally not how they had been raised up to that point. But she had this conversion experience during this interview.
I was going to say, you were pivotal in her expansion, I imagine.
Exactly. And she suddenly realized with my interview that she had a unique, among televangelists, a unique ministry to the gay and lesbian community, to the queer community. And
that was a community that had been told that you're not allowed in church. God doesn't love you. I mean, she was doing so much damage control.
Oh yeah. And it has to be said too that a year and a half later, Jerry Falwell brought them down and destroyed PTL.
Yep.
And destroyed Jim and Tammy. Yep. And Jim went to prison. And Tammy divorced him, and I mean their lives were forever changed. And that was the summer of 1980, or in the year of 1987, and the interview was November of 85. And there have been some who have said, and there's no way to prove this, of course, but some have said that it was my interview with Tammy Faye that was the straw that broke the camel's back for Jerry Falwell and Pat Robertson and the other conservative televangelists. And that was the moment they said, this has got to stop. We've got to bring them down.
You know what I bet a lot of it was too, is that you were not, like at that time, especially, people equated gay men to being flashy and very colorful and, wearing women's clothing and just all these, awful, stereotypes. But you looked like Pat Robertson. You looked like Jerry, much more handsome. But I imagine that they saw
the first person to ever say that.
No, but I imagine that they saw someone that looks like them. And
thought, no, I know.
We can't have this.
I was pretty preppy.
Yeah.
And she even said to me at one point, a lot of gay men look homosexual. You do not. Right. You do not look homosexual at all. And of course, when Troy Perry played that interview in the summer of 1987 as the opening of the 1,000-delegate MCC World Global Conference. And he played the interview. And when she said that to me, they all knew me, and seen me scream on the dance floor and do my fans and stuff. And so they all went, oh my God, she thinks he's butch. He's not, he doesn't look gay. Are you kidding?
Oh my God.
So that was a matter of great humor for a lot of my peers.
Of course. Well, it was funny too, that interview, Tammy Faye has the gift of gab, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I found her not cutting you off, but there were several things that you were almost seeming like you were going to start speaking on, and she would cut in with, either to touch base on that again or whatever. Was there anything that you felt like either she was projecting or that you didn't get to say, and you look back and wish, God, I wish I could have said that better or said that also?
Oh yeah. Oh, I came home from the interview thinking I'd done a terrible job and wishing that I had said this and that I hadn't put it that way. And I wish I'd put it that way, and oh my God, I was so awful. I told my neighbor, best friend, Lucia at the time, I said, oh my God, I'm so glad no one I know will ever see this interview.
Yeah.
So
here we are 35 years later.
37 years later. And it's a matter of record now in film, feature film.
Yes. Yeah. I was so excited that she won the award for Best Actress because I'm choosing to ignore what else happened in that award show because it diminishes what she got to speak on. But what an advocate she also is for the community of not just LGBTQ people, but for the community of believers, the community of faith people who feel, like if they don't believe a certain way, that they don't get to call themselves faith, Christians or whatever. One of my questions was, did the Christian media try to squash this interview? And I just realized as we were talking, the answer is duh, because what happened 2 years later with Pat and Jerry Falwell, they actually squashed their entire brand and their entire family and life.
Right.
I don't believe in hell, but I do for people like that. I want them to experience what they have put others through. But that's the evil in me. So one of the things
Evil queen.
It's in there. It's I blame it on the ginger.
I think we all have a little evil queen.
Of course.
Definitely.
One of the things I read is that you were supposed to be there live in the studio, obviously, but she was actually protecting you. And I read that as she was watching out for your health, but she was actually afraid of prejudices within the studio, people like either not showing up to work to boycott or maybe even physically harming you.
Well, yeah, I don't know about physically harming me, but there were she felt that I would not be treated well by the people, the staff at Heritage Village. I would have had to stay at their Heritage Village hotel, and she was afraid that they wouldn't treat me well in the hotel, and that the camera crew wouldn't work if I came into the studio. So that's why they had me on a doily in Ontario, California, instead of in Heritage Village.
Yeah, why did they make you film in Ontario? Because when they said it was an hour and a half from your home, I thought, well, an hour and a half from LA is going to be, not easy to get to. Why did they put you out there?
Because I'm sure they couldn't find a TV studio that they could rent other than this little Catholic TV station. It was a Roman Catholic TV station out in Ontario. And for some reason, they were able to book that studio. And it wasn't very long before, they were going to fly me out on a Tuesday, and then do the interview on a Wednesday and then fly back on Thursday. Well, they canceled the flight, or they canceled my coming out there, and they scheduled the interview for Friday. So that was a really tight window. I'm sure that they had to scramble to find a TV studio where I could be, where it would be okay for me to be seated. And I have to say that I had done a lot of media interviews about being gay and about having AIDS in the 70s and 80s. And
how did you become that voice?
Well, I had done a lot of interviews about being gay when I was in Hartford. And when I was diagnosed with full-blown AIDS, I became a client at AIDS Project Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And there weren't very many of us back then. I was like the 84th client of the AIDS Project, or 86th or something. Anyway, they recognized that I had experience in front of the camera, and they put me in front of the camera as somebody who could talk about living with AIDS articulately. He said very inarticulate. No, and so they put me in front of the camera and in front of the TV cameras. And what was interesting was that back in those days, people with AIDS could not go into TV studios to be interviewed. Yeah. I was not allowed. So I was interviewed in an alley beside the AIDS Project Los Angeles on a chair, and with a little earpiece and a little lavalier mic, and at the end of the interview, while the interview, a panel was talking about AIDS back in the studio at KABC or wherever, and the camera crew wouldn't work if I had come into the studio. So that was the way things were back in the mid 80s. And I have to laugh because every time I took the earpiece out in the alley beside APLA, I took the earpiece out and took the lavalier mic off, and I handed them back to the sound person. And the sound person inevitably would go, "Oh, no, you throw them away, or put them away, or do with them what you will." But we're done with
those things were not cheap. So for them to say that speaks to their level of fear.
Exactly.
God, yeah. So can you, because I don't want you to rehash things if they're painful for you, but can you just, for my younger listeners, talk about some of the stigmas and discriminations you experienced as a gay man living with AIDS in the 80s?
Sure. Well, I more than once, I mean, I was asked not to use the bathroom a few times in people's homes during that time.
This isn't in Iowa. This is in Los Angeles, California.
Los Angeles. I would get served on paper plates where everybody else was served on china. Or, I could, every time I had a glass of what soft drink or whatever, the host would take the glass from me and scrub it with steam clean it, right in front of me. And I was not invited to a lot of parties but and I have to say too that there was fear even in the hospitals. I can't tell you the number of times that I was hospitalized when my meal trays were left outside my room because the orderly would not come into my room with the meal tray, and either a friend would come to visit and carry the tray in because they noticed it outside on the ground outside my on the floor, or a nurse would bring it in later. I was too weak to get up and get it myself. But that was common in those days. And there was so much fear. People were afraid of coming into the same room with me. Yeah. They were, because we, for the longest time, we didn't know how AIDS was transmitted.
Right.
We didn't know there was a virus. And as far as we knew, it could be caught by breathing the same air. And so, I remember a time when it was only lesbians who would come visit me.
Yeah. Because it was the gay-related immune deficiency syndrome.
And gay men were terrified of it. It was gay-related immunodeficiency. Gay men were terrified of it. They were terrified of anybody who had it. And so I was left alone a lot.
Yeah.
I was housebound in 82 and 83. And if it hadn't been for my lesbian friends, my friend Lucia in particular, I would have died of loneliness, if nothing else. So.
Yeah. And then just to speak to those lesbians, that lesbian community also, those same lesbians are the ones that saved our brothers during this crisis as well by donating blood, because gay men could not donate blood. Exactly. And we still can't. And I also use this as a chance to plug. There's an advanced study that's being done through the FDA that I'm actually a part of, that we're donating blood and doing all these questionnaires that is forcing the hand of the FDA to accept our blood. Yeah. So they're saying, my last appointment 2 weeks ago, the doctor said that within a year, gay men should be able to freely donate blood without any discrimination.
Wow.
And I just thought, and I keep posting about it, and people just don't seem to be as excited about it as I am, but I'm the son of a nurse, so I've always wanted to give blood. And I just think this is going to be a huge day when I, as a openly gay man, can go to a blood bank and say, get my blood.
Exactly.
I mean, God, so anyway, so I'm waiting for that docuseries or something about, because there's actually a few lesbian sisterhoods that were actual organizations back in the 80s, as I'm sure you know, that formed to save their brothers who were dying of this disease. And so anyway, that was a little tangent. When you, because your parents were very accepting off the bat of you being gay. Maybe not accepting, but they still loved you and didn't kick you out or anything. When you got diagnosed, did they change their tune a bit, or did they still stay by your side?
Well, yeah, they were as scared of AIDS as anybody.
Sure.
And so, it was difficult for them. And also,
and you were in the limelight. I mean, they were probably going to church and having to answer to friends saying, what's going on with your son?
Yeah, he's all over the news, because I was doing interviews on CNN and other national things, the Tom Snyder Show and CBS This Morning and all kinds of things. And well, my parents were very, they never joined PFLAG, but they did what PFLAG does,
Yeah.
in terms of saying to their friends and to their congregation where they went to church, he's our son, we love him, and nothing's going to change that. And they were terrified of hospital. My father particularly was terrified of hospitals and of sick people. And so they would come to see me. They lived in Sun City, Arizona in their retirement years. And they would come to see me occasionally, very occasionally. But they were scared of it, not because they were scared they were going to get AIDS from me, but because they were afraid of terminal illness. They were afraid of sick people and hospitals and all that sort of thing. But they threw a lot of money at me. I mean, my parents were very, for school teachers, were very wealthy because they had inherited money. And they also were very wise investors anyway. So they had money, and they supported me minimally, but they did support me through the years I couldn't work. And they, like, right after I was diagnosed as terminal, they bought me a piano and they bought me a car, a new car. And that was wonderful. But then later on, their homophobia reared its head in other ways. Because, even though we are supportive or we love gay people, it doesn't mean that we're not still victims of our own homophobic culture.
No, you're exactly right. Exactly right. Well, doing all these interviews, I mean, not just the one with Tammy Faye, but with, doing CNN, or, you're speaking, I mean, the conversation that you were having at that time on faith and sexuality, I'm sure ruffled a lot of feathers. When I do it now, it's meant more to, like, either challenge religion, or it's meant to help people find healing within their religious trauma. But with you, I'm sure that you were causing some religious trauma for a lot of mainstream Christians. Did you ever see backlash or threats or anything?
No, surprisingly not. Certainly there were a lot of people who thought that I was not, speaking the truth, speaking God's truth, because they believed that God was, judging us. I became the director of AIDS ministry for the Metropolitan Community Churches worldwide after I recovered from AIDS in 1987. And I got well, and I was well for the next 20 years. And
what you're saying is that you went from having full-blown AIDS to going into a remission type of thing back into what was either GRID or HIV.
Well, it was HIV. I mean, I still had HIV.
Right.
But I was not, I was asymptomatic.
Sure.
I had been terminally ill for 5 years, 82 to 87. I was seriously ill. But the Suramin put my cancers into complete remission. And in the months after I got off of Suramin, the damage continued to be horrible. My eyes became so inflamed that I couldn't see. I went blind, and I was paralyzed on the left side of my body. And I mean, it was awful. And I wasted away to a skin and bones. And so people thought, in 86, I was dying, and that was it. The sermon was over, but I was going to die anyway, even though my cancers were still in remission. And then I started to get well. And by 1987, I had fully recovered, and I was back at the gym, and I built up my muscles, and I was a specimen of good health for the next 20 years.
And also the poster child of surviving this, what was still then a gay-related disease.
Right.
I'm sure, I bet people just loved to hate you, to see how you were victorious over this disease.
Oh, yeah. I mean, here we had evidence that God loved us. I mean,
right.
God did not heal somebody who had repented of being gay.
Right.
God healed somebody who was proudly, loudly gay.
Yeah. Ugh, what a black God. It's incredible, Steve. You're just, you're a gay icon. Leave Tammy Faye alone. You're a gay icon.
People have been saying that recently, and it's like, who are they talking about? I mean, I'm just Steve. I always have been.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. Since 18 months old, that's what I'm saying. You were destined to be this voice for two different communities that don't really get along. What was it like when Jessica Chastain called and approached you with what she was doing with the project?
Well, she didn't. I called them because they had finished filming, and Jay Baker, Jim and Tammy's son, told me, "Oh, guess what? They're making a film about Tammy Faye Baker. They've already shot it. It stars Jessica Chastain and Andrew Garfield as my parents, and you're in it. Your interview is a pivotal scene in it." And I went, "Oh, really?" And
so where's my paycheck?
No, I wasn't after a paycheck, but I did want them to know that I was still alive and that I would be happy to do interviews or whatever around it, if they wanted me to. And so I wrote at my friend Alison Arngrim's urging. She did more than urge me. She strong-armed me into writing a letter to the studio, to Searchlight Pictures, saying, I'm that guy, that gay man with AIDS that Tammy Faye Baker interviewed back in '85, and I'm still here. I'm still alive. And the publicist, weeks later, the publicist for the film wrote me back and said, "How wonderful to hear from you, and we're so glad that you're alive and thriving, and yes, if you'd like to be part of the rollout for the film, we'd love to have you do interviews and things like that, and maybe come to the premiere in New York." And so, I did, and that's where I met Jessica. I didn't talk with her or anything prior to that. I heard from her through private messages on Twitter and Instagram that she had decided to do the film because of my interview with Tammy Faye. That's what made her decide to buy the rights and to develop the film, because she was so moved by that one interview. And she added later, I learned, she told me that every day in makeup, she would listen to the interview while she was being made up over and over again to get into Tammy's head, to get into Tammy's voice, and to become the character of Tammy Faye. And it was so she had that interview with me 1,000 times, she told me, when we went to the Oscar nominees luncheon together.
That must have been wild.
Oh my God. It was amazing. And, one of the most amazing things, I mean, totally aside from the fact that, oh my God, I'm with movie stars. And I mean, there had been movie stars who at the New York premiere who fawned over me, and now to be in the Oscar nominees luncheon and have people know these very important Hollywood people know who I am. Jessica would start to introduce me, and they would interrupt her and say, "Oh, we know exactly who he is. He's Reverend Steve Pieters," and I went, "Oh, hi," yeah, I am. And the publicity afterwards was that she got all the headlines from the Oscar nominees luncheon, because who else brought an actual character from her movie
exactly
to the luncheon?
Yeah.
Nicole Kidman couldn't bring Desi or Lucy.
But, well, what are you still with the MCC Church in terms of leading a congregation?
No, I'm retired.
Okay.
I'm officially retired. I've never been busier, but I'm retired.
I was going to say, are you retired?
And I've just finished my memoir, and
oh my gosh,
being shot. I have a literary agent, and it's being shopped around to publishers. And we're getting.
Well, after it's out, we'll have to have you back, because I'm going to have to order a personalized copy.
Yeah.
Where do you see what's your perception of being gay in America today in 2022?
Well, I think that we are in a better position than we've ever been in, technically, legally.
Mm-hmm.
We have, we can get married now. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I never thought I'd see that in my lifetime.
Yeah.
Never. And it's happened. And it's kind of old news now.
Yeah.
And there are increasing number of states that are passing anti-gay, anti-women, anti-LGBTQ legislation.
Yep.
And I don't mean to wag my finger. I'm sorry. Well, yeah, I am wagging my finger.
No, let's wag your finger.
And we are always in danger of having our rights rolled back.
Yep.
We may lose the right to get married.
Yes, you're right.
We lose the civil rights that we have in certain states.
You were correct.
And I mean, you can see it happening with you mentioned the Don't Say Gay bill and with Ron DeSantis in Florida. And there are other states too. I understand there's a state in the Northwest, I think it's called Idaho, where it's against the law to support your trans children.
Yeah. Alabama just went, Governor Kay Ivey, she also just signed into law that it's criminal to provide any sort of trans resources for people 18 and younger. So anybody that's below the legal status of an adult cannot receive hormone blockers. And there's a dialogue there for sure to be had. But the answer is not just to outlaw and ban, because it erases the chance for education and grace.
Yes.
I have zero respect for this woman because I'm not going to say something that could be called libel or slanderous. She has her own rumors about her. And part of what I think, same with like Lindsey Graham, I wonder if these people are so against us because they're so jealous of our freedom to be ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even back in the 70s and earlier than that. I mean, look at the gay people in my seminary, when my seminary days in the 70s, who wouldn't have anything to do with me.
Yeah.
Because they were threatened by my out and proudness, and I think that oftentimes the most homophobic people are closeted.
Absolutely.
LGBT people.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. What would you say to, because I try to get messages spoken to a lot of, I try to get guests to speak to those queer youth growing up in churches where they're not getting any kind of leadership or guidance as it relates to being themselves. But what would you say to the young, proud queer community? Because my fear now is that we are going to start losing rights state by state and potentially even federally speaking. What would you say to the young queer community who maybe doesn't know what you've been through and know what it took to get here?
You don't want to go back to those days. You really don't. I mean, to the days where you could be arrested for coming out of a gay bar, where you could be arrested for I mean, the police harassment,
yeah,
and the way that we were treated by the police after being arrested, was criminal in and of itself, and we don't want to go back there, and it's up to the youth now, the queer youth, to take over and I mean take over our roles as my generation. So many of my generation did not get to grow old.
Yep.
And those of us who are older, we're not going to be around forever. And we don't have the kind of energy that we had as youth and as the current generation of gay youth, queer youth have. So use that energy for good and for justice and for, maintaining our rights, our right to be, our right to have housing, our right to be educated, our right to have jobs.
Yeah, it's not just about getting married. It's about your livelihood.
No, exactly.
What is it like to use that epithet that you just used about queer youth? Because you grew up in a generation where that word was commonly weaponized against you. Similarly with the word queer. Yeah, same with this podcast, that being fagnostic. I get a lot of raised eyebrows, mostly from straight people who, are like, oh, I thought we couldn't say that word. But is it so strange to be able to say queer in like an affirming, positive, communal way now?
Yeah, I mean, and I still, I think I'm sure a lot of other people of my generation have a hesitancy to use the word queer, because it still has those overtones of the way it was used pejoratively against us back in the day, back in the 70s and the 80s even. And, queer just, and same with the word fag. I mean, I remember a time when I had friends who said, well, I'm gay, but those people over there are fags.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gay, but, they're homosexuals.
Yeah.
And saying
and they were saying that they could pass in a straight world, whereas those guys, no, they can't.
Gay meaning I have integrated my homosexuality into my persona, and I'm out and proud and gay and loving and all of that. And homosexual or fag being someone who has not integrated their homosexuality, who is not living out and proud, but who may be going to the bars and having sex with us, but then
like Randy,
but then not wanting to have anything to do with us on campus.
Yeah.
So those and that was and we would pejoratively call them queer. And now, we have owned those terms. We have taken those terms back and redeemed them by making them queer is a statement of pride.
Yes. Yeah, it's a badge of honor.
And, you probably noticed in the course of this interview that I still have a tendency to go gay and lesbian,
right?
Or lesbian and gay. But, I have to remember it's LGBTQIA.
Plus, yeah.
Plus.
Yeah, there's that's one thing I had a guest on recently that we spoke to about the pronouns. And he was saying that while he is happy to identify his pronouns, he doesn't want us to get stuck in just what we've created, because it took us so long to get to this non-binary. So we need to keep that fluidity growing and expanding to really encompass any way that you choose to identify.
Yeah.
I just thought that was such an interesting perspective. To wrap up, because I could talk to you for hours.
We'll and do this again.
Well, and after the book comes out, we will. And also because we live so close to each other, we have to get coffee sometime soon. I will treat you.
Do that. Yeah.
And then, but what would you say to the divine were they standing before you based on your entire life experience?
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you. And I'm so grateful.
I see it in your face. I could get as verklempt as Tammy Faye did during your interview, but you can see my face, so you'll see me get emotional. But that's a beautiful place to end. I mean, your gratitude, there's those memes going around right now saying, like, how do you say your blankety blank without saying your blankety blank? And it's like the same thing. How do you show that you're thankful without saying you're thankful? And it's just the way that you live. It's the way that you speak. It's the way that you engage with me and your outlook on the world. I'm so thankful that you have been given this sustained platform that's never ended, and that you've never been able to retire from it. You are going to be a voice until the end of time. You are now documented in the Academy, which is wild and so incredible. I'm so honored to get to speak with you about your legacy, Steve. And I look forward to being able to hug you in person as soon, and we'll share a coffee once we've, and hopefully we won't get another COVID wave with what's been going around. But anyway, I'm just so thankful that you're well and thriving and that you've been here today.
Thank you so much.
I will see you soon. Okay.
All right, Matt. Thanks.
All right. So much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And all the people said, gay men. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Fagnostic Podcast hosted by me, Matt Hayes. You can find me at matthayes.com, that's MATHAYES.com, or on Just the Millennial socials at Hayes on It, HAYES on It. Please go subscribe, review, and share this podcast. And in the meantime, peace be with all y'all.
Hi, Michael Spicer here. Matt Hayes forgot to put my name in the credits of his podcast as the composer, but I'm here to tell you that I wrote the music for his podcast. Whatever it's called, I don't know.